be allowed the opportunity to learn, work, and live in Treaty 11 lands within the Gwich'in settlement area and the lands of the Inuvik final agreement. We respect the generous sharing of traditional wisdom and knowledge. We commit to honoring paths towards self-determination. Item number 2, adoption of the agenda. There's one addition, item 4.1, the RCMP report. I need a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Kulikowski and Councilor Gal. Any discussion? All those in favor? Declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest, anyone? Councilor Harder.
Sorry, 8.2.
You. Anyone else? Hearing none. Item 4, delegations, presentations, presentations, 4.1, the RCMP report, and Mr. Alden from the RCMP is here. I've got your right, sorry.
That's okay, Your Worship, it's the sergeant, but Jesse is fine for everybody in this room. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for having me. I know there's lots going on in the area. Smoke's been challenging for us all the last little while, fires, and now with the internet acting up, it's been definitely been a challenging week or two for everybody, so thank you. And kind of that leads me into just wanting to thank town of Inuvik for all the assistance that our other emergency services have been giving the RCMP recently. The fire department being a big partner, the paramedics. I know I don't think they're directly working for the town of Inuvik, but I'm sure you have a big role in that. The hospital obviously as well. So they've been big partners for us recently. So wanted to thank them for that. And then just not to take your time, I know you guys lots on the go. I think I heard of Old Crow people are going to be arriving here too. So I won't take too much of your time, but I did want to point out a few things. One, we've had a bit of a change in our scheduling, how we deploy our police officers. And that's just based on statistics. So when we get our calls for service, when we're seeing crimes being committed, we've been able to sort of move our resources around to better reflect when those calls come in. Here in Inuvik, that's mostly the weekends. So we see definitely an influx of calls on the weekends, early Saturday mornings, Friday nights, early Sunday mornings. So we've been able to bolster our members with that, just with some changes in the way we do business. That started sort of at the beginning of July. And so far we've been seeing some positive results, I think, with that. So more to come. We'll keep monitoring that, make sure it works. And if we can tweak it as we go, we want to work smart, not just harder all the time. So, and the second thing, we were lucky enough to have our traffic services come up here for about a week in July. So we got out, did a little bit more enforcement in the month of July, hence the impaired driving charges and the tickets laid under the Motor Vehicle Act. So it's always good to have them come up and support our efforts, right? Because that's sort of their expertise, and we always love having people come up to help us out. So open to any questions that council or the mayor has.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for the report.
Thank you very much. guys.
Thank you, sir. Item 5, nothing question period, over here. Item 6, 6.1, the minutes of the July 24th and 26th, 2023 council meeting. Mover and the seconder. Councilor Gallons and Councilor Harder. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. 6.2, the minutes of the July 31st, 2023 special council meeting. I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Devlin and Councilor Alexis. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. 7.1, the action items list. Any comments? Questions? Deputy Mayor Kulikowski.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the update to the action items list. Looks like there's some really strong action happening. Sorry, I lost my words there for a second. Looking forward to see what the outcome of some of these research items are, and happy to see the water main break has been fixed. SAO Travis, so thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kulikowski. I just thought, I'd asked Jenna where the SAO actually had an opportunity to address council in the agenda for each meeting, and I thought this would be the place to do it, because I couldn't really find another, I didn't want to take away from the director's reports. So I kind of plunked in what the SAO is currently working on. So this is kind of the SAO's current task list. There's actually one more item on here that we just worked on today, which is a new organizational structure to service the town of Inuvik, because we've got a lot of missing vacancies and some roles that we are missing are very critical. So we've restructured ourselves, and tomorrow we're going to put a post out to show the town what numbers to call, how to get a hold of us, and who's doing what in the town, so that we don't drop the ball in terms of providing services to them. So that's sort of the ninth thing to add to my list. And I do have one picture that I'm very proud of that I need to share. I know you've all seen it, but I gotta show it again, because this is the leak that was on Tunanook and just off of Mackenzie down Tunanook. There's a little bridge that goes over our utilidor
Behind the old Escalade.
and it was leaking, and yay, it got fixed, so no more water. So I just thought I'd share that one more time for just show some good news, because all too often there's a lot of negativity and bad news shared, but tonight I just wanted to share some good news.
Deputy Mayor Kulikowski.
Just one pronunciation to help SAO shout, it's Inuvik.
Did I say Tunanook?
Yeah,
We can illustrate that.
that's all right, yeah.
Any further questions? Sorry. Did I interrupt you?
No, I was just gonna ask if anyone had any questions about any of the other items.
Councillor Gallus.
So it's really good to see that the pool's been reopened, but any leaks so far?
There's been leaks for the position. I don't think we've had any.
Take a drive around the building.
Councillor Gowan, the team at the MSC did some visual inspections where apparently they can remove hatches to look under the pool, and apparently you have to have a confined space training to go in there to actually do the inspections. And we don't currently have that particular person on staff to actually go inside to the confined space to check. But their visual checks from the hatches, they could not see any leaks, but we'll definitely be monitoring.
Further question?
Is there any plans for that type of training through either the director of community services or public works? So someone can actually do those inspections.
So the Councillor Gowan, the aquatic supervisor, is looking into seeing if she can do that training online. If we can do it online, great. If we have to send her physically to take the course, we'll have to look at where we can find it within our budget to send her on that.
Any further questions? Seeing none. 8.1, you said the auditors are calling in or?
Zoom, they're coming in on Zoom.
Yeah, I think he should be there. I don't have a request from anybody to join. Okay, I'll just put it on.
There might only be audio only. We failed at Zoom all day today, federal government meetings.
So maybe we can move on with the agenda and just delay that item until they are available. Everybody in agreement with that or?
Yep.
Okay, right, 8.2, Councillor Harder, you have conflict? Okay, 8.2 is a tender award for the landfill access road. Recommendation. There was one bid received from Northwind Industries, $436,924. Well, obviously, the recommendation is to award the landfill access road, Bear Fencing Road, tender contract to Northland Industries Limited for a tendered price of $463,924.
Thank you.
I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Merrill, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kulikowski. Any comments, questions, Deputy Mayor Kulikowski?
I'll let Councilor Devon go first. They might say that.
Councilor Devlin.
Yeah, I was just curious if, just as far as the tender went, I spoke with a couple of outside contractors who never saw this tender. And I'm just curious about where it was advertised. And I didn't even find it on the website either in the current or even recent past tenders. So I am curious about where it was advertised, to only have received the one bid, because I know there was multiple contractors that were interested in bidding on this project. Thank you.
You know, I don't have the answer to that question. Say, Travis, do you know anything about it?
Your worship, the tender was handled on behalf of the town of Inuvik by AECOM Engineering out of Edmonton. So I would have to reach out to AECOM to see where they do their advertising for our particular tender. I know they originally tendered it out and 2 other bids were received from 2 different companies. And both bids came in over budget. And AECOM revised the project on our behalf into smaller scope and smaller pieces so that we could fit it within our budget. But as to where they advertise, I would have to check with them.
We'll get that information for you, Councilor Devlin, and hopefully have it available for the next council meeting before sooner. Deputy Mayor Kulikowski.
Just, is there like an elevator pitch version of what this is? Cause is it a road that has to go all the way around where the fence will go? Is that why it's called a road, or what is it?
Deputy Mayor Kulikowski, the base basically is a road. So we have to build a base to be able to build a fence on it. And then they have to be able to drive around the road to inspect and maintain the fence because it will have an electrified wire that goes all the way around to zap the bears. So the road will serve 2 purposes. It'll be an access road to check the fence and a base to build it upon.
Any further questions? Being none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Whatever is on the
You're on now?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go back to 8.1. I believe the auditors are on 30 minutes now. Good evening.
Ethan?
Ethan, and I'm not sure who this other person is, the phone number. Can you guys hear us?
Have the audio.
They're there. I'm calling you.
It'll be the feed. That we attempted on some pretty high end system.
Are you there? We cannot hear. Okay, we will unmute the participant, like the third person, the cell phone number. Does ask to unmute them? Yes. Well, I sent a request for them to unmute. It won't let me unmute them. Maybe we just give you the phone number for the conference room. So it's. Yeah. Oh, you got it. Do you want to call in? Yeah. Do you want to call in? We prefer that you just.
No, you can just call direct to that phone.
So it's
And then we don't have to use the
777
2669.
867 777
2669.
2669.
And that way there's.
I should know how to do it.
So they're gonna call us now.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds right. Okay. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Hi, Ethan, can you hear us?
Good evening. Yes, hello, everyone. I am now connected.
First of all, get the financial statements over a second, or then we can start your presentation if you don't mind. Council moved by Councilor Devlin, seconded by Councilor Gallagher. Discussion, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ethan.
I'm sorry, the audio is a bit weak. Am I to begin my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, thank you all very much, Mayor and Council, for having me to present the financial statements for the town of Inuvik for the year ended December 31st, 2022. My name is Ethan Oatman. I'm the Director of Operations with EPR Yellowknife Accounting Professional Corporation. We've been the auditor with the for the town for about, I believe, the last 5 years now. So it's a great opportunity again to be able to present these statements. Just as a forward on the presentation, I'm really going to try to keep this short and concise, just hit the highlights and try to keep this into within a half hour. So I will just discuss the independent auditors report. So this is basically the report that we as auditors provide after we have planned and executed the procedures on the financial statements. Our job as the auditor is to provide an opinion. And in this case, we have provided what's called a clean opinion. So as a result of the audit work and after discussions with management, we've found no material remaining in the statements and the financials. And it's referred to as a clean opinion where there's no qualifications. Some minor matters have been discussed directly with management, and those are in the process of either having been addressed or been addressed, but nothing remains so significant such that it would impair our ability to provide a clean opinion. So that's definitely favorable. It's the highest quality of opinion that can be given. And again, this is basically the entire premise of our work. Bear in mind that all of this is at the draft stage only. And this evening, or when council decides they wish to sign a few documents that I provided earlier, and then we'll be able to bring this audit to a conclusion, at which point the auditor's report will be signed and dated and provided in final form. So just to hit the highlights here, we have the statement of operations. So this is the statement of the total financial assets, liabilities, and non-financial assets of the town. Overall, we're going to see that it was, in terms of non-capital operations, it was fairly consistent over the year. Obviously, you know, at this point by December 2022, COVID is kind of in the rearview mirror on a lot of things. So we start to see some normalcy return. We take a look at cash together with the operating cash and reserve funds. So we see here the highlights are mostly just the drop due to increased, or I should say continued capital investment. Of course, the utility project is ongoing and there's funding for things like the pavilion, welcome center, biomass heater, and other types of capital projects. Taxes, grants, and move receivable. Again, the increase we're seeing is usually just due to the rate increase. No fundamental issues with collections, of course. You know, there are always some delinquent accounts, but nothing sizable or warrants any concern. Looking down overall then at some of the major liabilities. So again, trade, accounts payable, accrued liabilities. This is within normal, nothing abnormal here. Some slight changes due to some holdbacks. And deferred revenue is fundings that has been received, but not yet earned. Most of this is deployed on future capital programs. and will be spent at that point in time. The long-term debt, which is the debenture, continues to be paid via the gas tax and no issues there. So overall, we're seeing an improvement of the net financial debt. So it decreased by about 700,000 over the prior year from minus 5.4 million to minus 4.7 million. And so we're going to see this net financial debt decrease over time. And then, of course, looking at the non-financial assets, most of the change in capital assets was about 6 to 7 million in capital additions, which is very consistent with the prior year. The similar types of programs carried on. Utilidor, Pavilion, Welcome Center, these programs lasted multi-year, and there was a few smaller capital projects and upgrades. So looking at the annual surplus, we see it's increased by just a hair over $4 million to $139 million. And turning the page to statement 2, which is statement of operations and accumulated surplus. So this is the revenues and expenditures of the town for the period. The biggest sole source of generation of funds internally for the town is, of course, property taxes. So we see that goes up by approximately the increase to the mill rate. In terms of government transfers, very consistent. This is very heavily, of course, capital contributions, not a significant change to any operating contributions. And then we're seeing some normalization here of things like fines, development levies, licenses, permits. Land revenue, of course, will vary year to year depending on what's sold. And then for those interested, other revenue is by and large mostly interest, and then the Arctic Development Expo. So we see a slight dip in revenues by about just a bit over 200,000 from the prior period, but not significant, definitely within normal variances. And then looking at the expenses, we probably won't look into the schedules in any great detail just because of the time it takes to go through them. But of course, we're happy to answer any questions anyone might have. Generally, overall, the expenses are quite consistent with the prior year in a lot of respects. You see that total expenditures have increased by a little over 300,000 in a year, and that's just due to a variety of factors, of course. Obviously, inflation was starting to hit a little bit towards the end of the year. Costs, especially in the north, keep escalating generally higher than they do elsewhere in Canada. So we see that general government costs are about the same. Nothing else really notable here. Land expenditures, again, this is all variable rather, depending on the actual expenditures in the period vis-a-vis the sale of land, so the cost of the land sale. And water and sewage expenditures would be non-capital expenditures, are about consistent with the prior year. So expenditures are quite normal, nothing particularly noteworthy within them on a material level, that is. And so you see here, we have an annual surplus of about $4 million, which is largely attributable to capital related projects. And just to go to statement 3, talk about this for a minute. So this just looks at the sort of the analysis of the change in the net financial debt and how the town improved its net financial position in the year. So we see a lot of that has to do with the annual surplus, and then funded by the acquisition of tangible capital assets and the removal of non-cash items like amortization. So we see a smaller increase than the prior year, but again, fairly consistent growth over the last several years in this area. And statement 4, a statement of cash flow, nothing particularly noteworthy here. It's, as I said, it's basically status quo on a lot of things. Continued capital projects, some have been concluded year over year from say 2020, 2021, and they've concluded in 2022. So we do see some changes in contract holdback payouts that will be reflected within things like AP. Some timing differences with AR, but that's mostly just funding related, gas tax related. And then we see here under financing transactions, again, we're just looking at the continued repayment of the debentures. and very consistent acquisition of capital assets. And as I mentioned before, already, you know, there's the ongoing utility door project, which is probably close to a third or more of this budget. Biomass heated pavilion welcome center, and of course, a variety of other programs and projects. So looking at cash at the end of the year, so it decreased by about 1.5 million over the prior year. Again, a lot of this has to do with the capital acquisitions in the period. General operations is fairly stable. By general operations, I mean non-water and sewer and non-capital items. And of course, we do see a little bit of uptick in interest received, of course, on the bank accounts due to rising rates in the period. The notes here in respect of time, I'll just go over anything here that's new or noteworthy. Most of these just describe the general policies of the town with respect to accounting of certain items. There have been no changes or significant changes to policies this year, nothing new to implement in terms of accounting standards. Nothing that typically warrants much concern. Again, it's very much status quo. Business was carried on as usual, not a lot of changes, which is good. Just to highlight here any sort of important notes. So again, we just look at some of the highlights of the of cash. Again, kept consistent in the prior year, but we see most of that is through the change in the operating reserve. So again, non-water and sewage assets are sometimes purchased in conjunction with grants and operational reserve funds. Importantly, we don't see much change to the allowance for doubtful accounts, on taxes, of course, because the city has, the town rather, has recourse to the land. Notable accounts receivable here. So we see funding for gas tax and we see biomass funding. Again, note the variances are generally due to a variety of capital programs in the period. And nothing really significant here. The note from the Children's First Society continues to be paid on time without issue. For accounts payable, just note the reduction is largely due to holdbacks again. So as contracts for major capital projects are finished, the holdbacks are released. So that is the main driver of the variability in accounts payable and accrued liabilities. Otherwise, during our audit work, we didn't note anything unusual. They're all fairly normal and consistent with the previous periods. And then deferred revenue represents funds that have been received and but are not yet earned, as in that there are stipulations attached to the revenue. Most of these are capital related. And those monies will be recognized in revenue when there's the related capital expenditure. Of course, the biggest two are CPI and gas tax. The debentures, again, they're being paid as normal. We may see some changes into this with the interest rates. I'm not a I'm not a banker exactly, so I don't deal with the ins and outs of these loans in particular, but the whole purpose of this scheme is to try to hedge interest rates and keep them relatively stable. So we'll have to see going into next year what impact there is on these principal amounts and the interest portion. Okay, I'll just just in terms of contingencies, again, so just to reiterate that the town participates in the NWT Associated Communities Insurance Program, so the town is proportionately liable for the program, but the program seems to be operating well. There's no issue in that concern. And then, of course, there's I'm sure everyone here would be aware of an ongoing lawsuit against the town As it stands at my last inquiry, there's no material concern with respect to that. We still have to disclose it. Pardon me, sorry about that. And major non-capital ongoing contracts are with respect to mostly the operation of the waste facility. And then we have a variety of capital contract commitments over the next fiscal year. Continuation of some existing programs and some newer programs as well. Schedule 1, just to highlight the major classes of assets where they were this year. Water treatment plant was the big one. Utilidor changes, mostly some conclusion of projects transferred to the appropriate asset class. But again, everything moves within the expected capital budgets and funding agreements. So very normal items. Changing the accumulated surplus. So again, we have to report the changes of the funds that make up the nature of the accumulated surplus. Of note here, we mostly see the large capital additions having an impact on the fund balances, particularly in water and sewage. Now there is of course, as it stands at year end, about a $3.2 million balance in the account, so not a particular concern there. The reserve fund balances for both the operating fund, water and sewage fund, and land fund appear adequate. No real concerns in that area. And I will not go into the individual schedules in detail. I'll just stop with Schedule 3. Schedule 3 just summarizes the service division areas and the major revenue and expense categories. Again, things were very, very consistent with the prior year. Looking at totals of things, we're seeing fairly consistent wages. We do expect, of course, wage growth over time, but there's also lots of changes, of course, that come with the unique employment environment in Inuvik. Overall here is fairly consistent. No significant changes. Much of it is just consistent operation of programs. Nothing really stood out as exceptional. And then we just see here at the very bottom, government transfers with respect to capital. So the amount that's funded by the government, and then the shortfall of the 2.9 million, the shortfall of the 6.9 million of additions versus the government transfers of 4.9 million is about $2 million. And that's about the reduction in cash during the period. So that's where the bulk of the money goes. It's the capital additions. Revenue itself, when we see the annual surplus, that is monies that has been basically spent on capital. The way the presentation style is here, we do see those large surpluses, and those large surpluses don't respect of the fact that there's an underlying capital expenditure that's not captured, and it's just a quirk of the reporting and the way the GNWT likes the reporting. There's no, that actual surplus that surplus for the year doesn't really exist because it's just embedded in capital additions. So yeah, overall, I'll just conclude quickly by saying it was a fairly normal year. Many similar capital programs were carried on during the year. Some concluded, some new ones started. Operations generally the same from a financial standpoint, of course. And I believe that is all I do have to say on this, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has them.
Any questions?
It's been pretty solid.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Oh, we had a mover and a seconder. Counselor Gallons. We already moved and seconded. Before we started. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, Ethan.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Take care. I know it gets confusing for me sometimes too. Okay, moving on. 8.3. The updates to the security camera policy. The motion is that Inuvik Town Council hereby adopts the town of Inuvik security camera policy FP 007 as revised. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kulikowski and Councilor Alexis. Now, the only change, my understanding, is to allow protective services access to the security cameras. Am I correct in that, SAO?
Correct, your worship. This is giving better strength and access and tool to our protective services department and the peace officers. They weren't on the list, and I think it's a great tool for them to have access to. So we're adding clarity to the bylaw, and that is the spirit of what this change is to give them better tools and better access.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councilor Devlin.
Yeah, I think this is a great motion. I got no issue with the bylaw for so protective services getting access to. I am just curious, when did we sort of switch to sort of public, and I mean public as in sort of regular surveillance of the cameras? I was the director who introduced the cameras, security camera system to the town many moons ago. And at the time, town council was very adamant about confidentiality and privacy. And at the time, the cameras were put up into an upstairs room where nobody, even I, didn't have access unless we needed. It's only unless we absolutely need something happen, then we would go up. So that nobody actually had access to sit there and watch the cameras. Sometime over the last few years, something's changed. But I'm also wondering, was there an incident that caused this change? Or are we surveilling people just because we can? Because this was a very big deal 10 years ago on, privacy. And if there was an issue that happened in the last 10 years that would portend for us to get more and more cameras watching things, I'm just curious if there was, and I'm not expecting SAO Travish to actually have any answers to this. But I am sort of curious, maybe some previous council.
Yeah, we'll check into it. I don't remember a change in policy.
Yeah, I don't either. That's why I was.
Do you remember anything?
I don't remember a change in the policy, but I think that having the camera system has allowed some monitoring in a different way, and it's addressed within here too, that as long as you have the signs posted and people are aware that the cameras are there, that I mean, when we look at the amount of vandalism that has happened in our facilities and in our parks in the last few years, I think it makes sense that someone is keeping an eye on areas that maybe you can't set foot on every 10 minutes or whatever. So I would think that's where it came from, but I don't remember like a decision that was made about the change. It may have just been that it became an easier way to monitor areas. But yeah, like I say, I don't have a definitive moment.
I think it's a great idea. I'm not against this at all. But when I'm going through the policy, there aren't very many guardrails there. There are some, but they're very generic ones. So guardrails on sort of that general use of it. And so I'm just a little concerned. If we just take a look at it at some point, not anything. We've got way too much on our plates right now.
I mean, I can just add really quickly, why the new SAO brought this one forward is because my time, I feel, is very valuable to be working on much more important things for the town. And I found that I was getting requests to review videotape for boat launch checks and other things. And I just felt this was a better tool to give to the peace officers. That's what the board is bringing it forward today. I can't speak for the past. I think it's a great tool for the peace officers. They work directly with the RCMP, and I felt that was the best place to market. And sorry, you have a new title, not to be announced tonight, but we'll announce it tomorrow. But currently, she's still the fire chief. Would like to
Director of
say
Public
something.
Services, or.
On something I've been called worse. However, so to clarify, our peace officers are not going to be sitting at their desks watching
No, I
cameras.
didn't think that.
It is definitely in response to a request from RCMP or a private citizen that had vandalism done that potentially. So the cameras are going to be posted that, you know, there are cameras at the boat launch, there are cameras at the MSC and that type of stuff. So I can assure you, we have no time to be sitting and watching people. It will be only in response to an incident that has occurred. And that is my understanding of, like if you're asking about, you know, the library or the MSC or anything where they're monitoring or happening and stuff like that. I believe their staff are far too busy to be sitting there watching people as well. So it is only a response to an incident that we would access that. Confidentiality wise, the only one I'd be issuing things to would be the RCMP as part of an investigation, or any extenuating circumstances like that.
And thank you, Fire Chief Pilaya. The other concern I had about the security camera system is because I'm too busy to monitor it and make sure it's working all the time. One of the other routine tasks that we've asked the peace officers to do is at least check it once a month to make sure it's working and recording. Because if you don't check on these systems, they can fail, and then the police will come to us and say, we need an hour of videotape for this date and this time. And if they're not monitoring it regularly to make sure it's working, then we can't provide that information. So it's a good thing for them to routinely check maybe once or twice a month when they come in on their shift. They check the camera system to make sure it's operational. And if it's not, they can quickly reach out to the security company to get it fixed. And that was my other concern. I've added this to the peace officers' roles. And in fact, I've already received feedback from them. And it's been such a great tool for them that they would like one extra camera at the library to cover alarms. Thank you.
Any further questions? All seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. 8.4, request to host the bingo on a restriction fleet. Inuvik Green Rescue 292 is requested. Hold one mega bingo on December 16th, 2023. Our blackout period is December 10th to January 1st inclusive. Reason they want that date, they don't say. Let's not hear anything.
Right after a payday.
One before I do ask for a motion, because actually 3 suggested motions. Councilor Gallus.
I think it'd be worthwhile knowing why they're asking for us to make an exception to the bylaw, just so we can have a sense, like, what's so special about that date, just so we know from their perspective.
I remember when we brought in this bylaw, I made just put my 2 cents within here, and I think Councilor Romero, who was part of council at that time, was so people would have a break over Christmas with no bingo to spend their money on. We better spend on family and that type of family events and so on and so forth. And that's why we did a blackout period. Am I correct, Councilor Romero, or something more?
No, that's correct. We also had far more bingos at that time. We had 3-4 a week. So right now we don't have anywhere near as many bingos.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this? Councilor Devlin?
I concur with you, Wood. I felt, I mean, there's a purpose for the blackout period, and certainly it was to sort of keep the gambling out, increase your family involvement, and allow people to save a few bucks a week before Christmas. And so I won't be voting in favor of this. I think that should be a blackout period, and I think that's helps with bringing together the community at that time of the year.
Thank you. I wasn't trying to influence anybody's decision, but present the information with their thoughts. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Kokoski.
Just a question, is every other Saturday from now until December full?
For that question, so.
Deputy Mayor Kulikowski, I would have to get the lottery committee schedule. I don't have that, but we can report that out.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Hey, I'm a little bit torn on this item because oftentimes around the table, we've talked about how the town aren't the babysitters of people and that we don't necessarily need to be, you know, stepping into households on items. So it kind of, yeah, I am a little bit torn on this item. I think that, as a community, I mean, do we need to have blackout dates to encourage people not to gamble? I mean, that's a very
Paternalistic.
yeah, it's paternalistic, it's overreaching what our duties are, it's, you know, folks have their money to do what they please. And I don't know that I feel right stepping in to say that they shouldn't have, you know, this or that or any other thing on a certain date, so I'll just leave it there, excuse me, leave it there for now.
Councillor Gallagher.
I definitely take that perspective, but I also think of another perspective, which is maybe we can't tell people what to do, but we also can say we're not gonna enable someone to do it. And I take Councilor Merrill's point that there are other opportunities to have a bingo besides this blackout period. I also think about folks who are affected by not having money in the house as well for Christmas. So folks who may not have control of purse strings. So it is, I think it is a complex issue worth discussing for sure. Yeah.
Councillor Merrill.
So, yeah, I very much understand the purpose that we had originally with the blackout, but the reality is people can gamble in so many ways now. And there's so much going on just within the town, whether it's online or squares, whatever other things people are doing, but people also gamble online. It's very different than it was 10 years ago, I think, as our other consideration. Can I just clarify, what are the dates of the blackout? I was just looking and couldn't find it quickly.
It's the first Sunday after December 10th, until sometime in January.
So the first Sunday after December 10th?
Is when the blackout starts. And it goes until January 1st.
So the first Sunday after January 10th,
December 10th.
or December 10th, sorry, the first Sunday, because December 10th is a Sunday.
Yeah.
So the
So
first
it's
Sunday,
that day.
it would be that day. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Oh,
Your worship, your worship.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make one point. They're not asking, we're not taking away something that's already in place. They're asking for an exemption from our current regime. So to a few of the councilor's points of, you know, are we there to regulate? They're asking for something that's already set in place, which is our responsibility, which is regulating the bingo here. We have rules in place, and this is asking for an exception to it. So this is above and beyond us controlling things necessarily in our community. It may have been the intent necessarily the first blackout. It is a time of holiday, family, and Christmas. And I do work for one of the organizations that does support its members at this time of year. And I've heard, we certainly hear some of the stories of tightness at this time of the year. And I have these concerns for our community. If the organization had put together a reason why they'd like to hold a mega bingo on the 16th of December. I have my own reasons why they want that date. I think we all do. But they didn't give us a reason, a good reason, in my opinion. So, thank you.
Counselor Merrill?
If their concern is having a bingo on a payday before Christmas, December 1st is also a payday. So I understand what you're saying, Councilor Bevan.
Any further discussion? Well, it has to be a positive motion. So be it resolved, the Inuvik Town Council hereby approves amending the lottery regulations to allow the Inuvik Marine Rescue 292 to hold one mega bingo on December 16th, 2023. The mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Kulatowski, seconded by Councilor Harder. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. Thank you. Department head reports. They have no bylaws. Department head reports. 10.1, the community services report. Any questions, comments? And point two, community services report. What's that? And point two, the capital projects report. Any questions? We need a motion to accept the reports. Councilor Merrill and Councilor Gallants. All those in favor? Carried. 11.1 is information only, the strategic priorities chart. Any questions? Item 12, council concerns. Any concerns? Councilor Merrill.
Not a concern, but I just want to comment how nice it is to see the former mayor's pictures up finally. See, we're just missing two, and that's great.
Yeah, I think Councilor SAO Hood, they got them all up there except for Natasha and I.
Oh, I'm there.
No, the fact is, so
Natasha may have gotten all the photos and frames together and I say, oh, hung them. So.
Okay. I knew Brent was involved. Thank you for that comment, Councilor Merrill. Any other comments? Councilor Devlin.
Not a concern at all. I've heard rumors of possibly a gathering for some of our senior staff that are leaving, and I'm sorry that neither of the two are here tonight, because I certainly did want to thank them for their time on behalf of myself, but they are all of us feel relatively the same way as well. Yeah, I think we've lost, you know, obviously a lot of history, a lot of talent, a lot of us. But I'm also very confident that we have some plans in place to deal with all that as well. I mean, I did want to thank Director Childs and Director Campbell for their contribution to the town. Thank you.
What time will we do?
Jenna, do we have a time booked for Friday? I know I'm manning the barbecue. What time are we starting? 1 o'clock.
We are having a small gathering at 2 o'clock at the Welcome Center, and there are no burgers or hot dogs. There will be taco in a bag, as per Director Chalice's request.
Or any member of council who wants to drop over, you're moving along.
That's 3 o'clock on Friday at the Welcome Center.
I guess I'm not anymore.
You get some taco bags.
Yeah, and that's your job.
Everybody's on a diet.
Any other concerns? Councilor Harder.
Thank you. I want to ask tonight before we go to the next council meeting. What's the update on Brandon Road? What's happening with that?
The last
School is starting, I'm not sure.
3 weeks?
Yeah, so I don't want to wait and ask that at the next council.
I guess Councilor Harder, so I spoke with Nick Bevington from Ankman in Edmonton about that project, and the budget dollars had to be spread over a number of years to do that road, according to Nick, Mr. Bevington, and he suggested that the road would be smoothed out so that the gravel and grading doesn't cause any issues for the start of the school year for this fall. And then next spring is when they'll do the curbs and sidewalks, and then eventual pave. And it was broken up over a number of years to accommodate the town budget, and that was the update that Mr. Bevington.
Yes,
So is this gonna be, this work is gonna be done prior to the start of the school year?
That's my understanding from Mr. Bevington, and he has been assuring me that he calls the current contractor, which is Northwind, to ensure that this work is a top priority.
Councilor Gowan, you have a question?
Just I guess a comment, if it's possible to have events outside of 8:30 to 5, Monday to Friday, some of us are working during the day. It's really hard for us to get out of the office and come and join the events. I know scheduling can be tough. I'm not asking as absolute, but if there are opportunities to have it in the evenings or maybe the weekends, it just helps those of us who are 8:30 to 5, Monday to Friday.
I don't have an answer for you, Councilor Merrill.
I would support that because I too can't just take time off work, so I think we both want to say goodbye and thank them, but it's just not feasible at 3 o'clock.
Any comment?
Would 4:30 or noon hour be more conducive to the folks that can't get away from work?
Either.
Either would be.
For me, noon, my time is scheduled, so I have lunch from noon to 1. All means, if I know it's something happening over lunch hour, then it's much easier to come.
All right, the administration will see if we can accommodate a noon hour for events as such for retiring and for individuals leaving our organization.
No, and it's a request. I mean, I know we're not all the council, but and we're not the ones doing logistics, so I realize different schedules and different people is not easy to get all of us on the same page, but if it's possible, whatever we can, so.
Councilor Merrill?
If it's already been planned for 3 o'clock this Friday, I don't expect for me to change it for this, but just going forward, if people would be aware of that. Because for some of us, it's impossible, we can't leave.
Any other concerns? Deputy Mayor Kulikowski.
Just since we have Chief Palaya in the room, is there any update available on what's happening with the wildfire, as well as how we're accommodating the folks from Old Crow? And because I assume that emergency preparedness would be in there too.
Thank you. That's the reason actually why I'm here, is to provide you with an update. Otherwise, I would be still building costs. So first and foremost, the one that is the most urgent right now was that this afternoon at around 3:30, we received a call from the GTC, who had informed us that they were coordinating the evacuation of the community here and had asked for our assistance in providing accommodation for them. So we quickly spoke with the SAO, spoke with GNWT, and they have opened up their resources to us in the form of cots, pillows, and bedding and that type of thing. The GTC is also coordinating food, and we are supporting that with our own efforts as well. We have a number of staff that were pulled into the MSC to accommodate that, as well as a number of our volunteer firefighters have also stepped up to assist in hosting our neighbor communities. My understanding is that they will be flying out 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon en route to Whitehorse. So it is just a very short time that we were able to step up and actually provide those accommodation for them. We have informed the public via a Facebook post, as well as the GTC has also provided information that way. So we are trying to provide information to our public, because as soon as the word evacuation happens, people are now thinking that Inuvik is being evacuated, so we have had to nip that in the bud. The next portion, which is our wildfire that I'd like to provide an update with. If you notice, I have been diligently trying to keep the public informed of what the information I'm getting from the NWT ECC fire updates. I don't want to put words into their mouth, so it is literally verbatim from what their fire updates are. That way we're all talking the same language that way. The last that I've heard, I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of updates here, but the last that I have heard is that the fire has moved to about 17 kilometers from us now. So it is starting to, just with the prevailing winds, that's why we are having the heavy smoke. It is still not a threat to the community. We do have heavy smoke in the area. So again, I've just been advising people to not play basketball, you know, when it's heavy smoke, and curtail their outdoor activities, wear masks, that type of necessary precautions that way. If the NWT, there will be a threshold at which, if we did have to be alerted for an evacuation potential, there is a mile marker that they will inform us that we would put out an alert first. So the alert, which I've already tried to provide to the people through our Facebook post, is make sure you know where all your important papers are, make sure you have your medication, you have a plan for your dog, you know, that type of stuff. I have been trying to encourage people to do, to plan in advance. So if the fire is coming towards us, it will be an alert first. And we will make it very clear to the community that this is not an evacuation order. This is a make sure that you got everything gathered in the event that we need to act, because we won't be able to do that for you. You have to take some responsibility and do that yourself. If it becomes then something that triggers an evacuation order, then that is where we would then, depending on the nature of the evacuation, either move different parts of the community to the community center, or at that point, we would be declaring a state of emergency and accessing the NWT resources for any evacuations outside of town that we would be looking at. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing moving forward. In terms of preparation for an event like that to happen, we have been meeting with the emergency operations group for the town. We have, funny, you'd almost think I was an oracle when we met about the evacuation center last week and we were talking about it. We are actually putting this into practice tonight. So it was good preparatory meetings that we have had. We have already learned a couple of things that just need some tweaking. I have ensured that the GNWT is aware of what we have done in terms of planning, just making sure all of our ducks are in a row, as well as we've been in contact, the SAO and myself, with the RCMP as well. And we will just continue on that way. It will just play out as everybody that needs to be communicated to will be. The community, we will give as much factual information and direction as possible moving forward.
Councilor Merrill?
Is it being shared other ways besides Facebook? Because not everybody's on Facebook or even on the internet.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the public communications officer is my son. And we have a town webpage that in terms of communication, it should be going onto the webpage as well. Certainly, we encourage people that are not on Facebook, and they know elders and people who are not on Facebook. If it ever came to an evacuation alert, then these are updates just to keep people and give them facts, is what's being provided through our Facebook page. If it became an evacuation alert, then it would be on the rolling channel. It would be posted in the post office. It would be, I don't have 3,000 phone numbers to be
No,
able
but
to
would
do
it come
that.
over like I was just down in BC when there was an evacuation?
Oh, the NWT, you know, they test the emergency response
that's
system.
something, you know,
I would assume that is, but I don't know that answer.
that would be them.
That would be the GNWT. That is not something that I would hit the button check. Yes.
So you mentioned that there's a mile marker, that's a threshold. But we're not even close to that marker yet from what you, I think the sense of kind of that point of no return.
Yeah, so when I hear what that is, then
Okay.
I will inform people as well.
Okay, and my second question is if folks have to leave Inuvik,
Mhm.
where do we go?
So again, that would be declaring a state of emergency. And that would either be by road if necessary, or we would be working with the GNWT in terms of, like GTC just did,
Yeah.
charter a plane and
Bring folks out.
bring folks out, right? So again, it's not first come, first serve. However, we would be taking a look at vulnerable populations first. You know, the elderly, our elders, our young families, you know, with children and those that are medically vulnerable would be going first, and then us more able-bodied people would be going next, and some of us would remain and deal with what's left. So
I'm guessing to be looking at community that can handle the numbers of people coming as well for capacity. Okay.
So, again, some of that stuff, it's hard to say exactly this spot, this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And as soon as it hits 15 kilometers, we're gonna do this, and if it hits 10, it's gonna do that, because it's really dependent on the weather. It is dependent on what other resources are available to be able to, you know, it would be great to evacuate to Yellowknife. But Yellowknife might not to, so we can't say this is going to happen when we don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. So there are plans in place, there are plans in principle in place, and what is moving forward, that is also what the GNWT has done. And so we can do what we can for our community. That is where town and council will be declaring a state of emergency, which then opens up the GNWT resources for us. So we are not at a point where we are declaring an emergency.
Anything further, SEO?
Just wanna add something in terms of our preparedness. Chief Kalaya and I have been on an extensive tour around the facility. We've gone as far as 40 kilometers out of town toward fire. I did a second follow-up drive as far as, I believe I went to kilometer 22 mark. Just trying to see and watch, monitor that fire over and above everything else that are going to be in the air. Earlier, I put up a picture to show that our utility water leak had been repaired. That has been my biggest loss of sleep over the last couple of weeks, knowing that we've got fire approaching and leaks in our water system. I am told there are ways to turn the utility system off the valve so that we are fully pressurized and can set up sprinklers. We've already identified where sprinklers would need to go. Do we have pressure for Cindy's crew to fight fires? And that leak was a really big red flag to me. So that's why I was putting so much pressure on a very remote engineer all the way in Edmonton to get that utility leak fixed so that we are always there with water pressure. And on that note, when it comes to engineers, I want to go back to a comment that Councillor Harder made about Raynette Road. I want you all as council and the mayor to know that I am extremely troubled and concerned that our two engineers that we work with do not reside in this town. They are miles and days away. They are maybe great at what they do, but I don't know how much longer they will do it for. So we spend an entire day in this room, Chitty and Cindy can vouch for me, working on an organizational structure that will strengthen and give us more power as an administration to deal with our infrastructure. And I personally am at a loss when it comes to calling engineers so far away when they're not even here to see our water leaks. And it would cost thousands of dollars for them to even come and check it. It's costing us thousands and thousands of dollars to deal with these very foreign engineers, and it troubles me. I don't like it. And if you give us some time, you're going to see very shortly in our forthcoming organizational charts and structures that in the future budgets, we are going to be coming forward to ramp up and staff up so that we can do some of this stuff internally and address some of this stuff internally. And when you all came into the building tonight, you probably saw a sign laying under our front doorstep, which is an absolute embarrassment to me every day that I come to work. As the SAO, I can't get that reinstalled because I have no access to contractors. My hands are tied by these as and when contracts. My hands are tied by engineers that aren't here. So we are addressing this in our new structure, and I'm gonna make sure that when a sign can't be put in the ground, that I, as the SAO, can get the work done by 4:30 today. So I just want you to know that I see it as well as a newcomer, that we are a municipality and can't even put a simple sign in the ground. That's troubling. And I have mentioned this to our worship, the mayor, and he has even made the comment that when our as and when contractors can't perform, that we will go out and find a contractor that can perform the work and build them back. So I'm this far away from having to go that route, and I don't want to have to. But we need to look at the way we're doing our capital works in this community. And we also have to look at the bigger picture on how we're life cycle costing it. Because no one in this organization can tell me when the next filter needs to be changed, when the next belt on a compressor or on a generator needs to be inspected. I don't have those charts and schedules, and every municipality I've worked in the past has that, and they have those numbers that they can press on their speed dial to say, hey, we'll put that sign in the ground. We don't have that here. It concerns me. So to your point, Councillor Harder, it is on the radar and we will do something.
Anything further?
I just, you brought up, Fire Chief, you brought up, Facebook and the website. We're currently in a situation in Inuvik where 60% of the community doesn't have internet access right now. So do we have a backup system on being able to mass communicate out to our community? Is there something we used to do in the early 90s or the 80s that we can start thinking about reviving in some way? Because
Well,
currently today,
we
it's
could-
60%.
We could send it in the mail,
No, I'm actually being relatively serious about this. We tend to assume, because, but I'll tell you this, I mean, on Facebook, I've got Starlink at home, so I'm at least a lot, you know, I'm up on, but my posts from the Beaufort Delta have dropped. I mean, I was telling people today at work, I'm seeing posts from people I had 5-6 years ago that I've never even seen because all of the Beaufort Delta posts are down, which means that people are having a lot of trouble accessing these things during an emergency. And the report from Northwest Tel earlier today was that we're looking at 4 or 5 days at least before this possibly could get fixed. So if there is something that happens in the next 4 or 5 days, I'm just wondering, do we have a plan B?
so there is the rolling channel for those who have television access, and having tested it last night because I can stream Netflix, I know that I can still look at New North Networks and their rolling channel. So if pertinent information would be going on there in the with the potential, if we needed an evacuation alert, then that would come across the rolling channel. And again, as I described, we would be posting it in the post office or other visible sites. Other than that, that is our alternate, as well as the town Facebook page, as well as the town website page. Despite, you know, unfortunately, we are in an environment where if there is any other option, then perhaps we could be sharing it with the local Indigenous governments like GTC, that they could perhaps send it out to their community members. IRC can be doing the same. Again, how that mechanism happens would be very similar to ours.
I just like to know that we have something in place just as a backup.
Councilor Merrill.
Radio, you know, be all over CBC, over every radio station, they'd be talking to you, and that's what we used to do, that's what we would do,
There we go.
right?
Looking for what we used to do.
Well, and you know what, if need be, we knock on doors. But I
Yeah, and
think
there's door
people-
knocking. I have bullhorns and
That's why I just want to know that we have something that we.
Flight of the Valkyries or something.
Do we not have like a community like siren?
No.
No, you know, like for an emergency, like you never know. Like, just-
Not to my knowledge.
I thought we used
We
to,
used to.
we used to have something like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
In the old days, they rang the church bells.
yeah.
I just want to thank you and your staff and all the town staff, because this is a lot of stress.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Thank you. I will pass that on to our firefighters and the rest of our emergency management.
Thank you.
Okay, if not anything else, I need to finish building costs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other concerns? Need a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Coolidge. All in favor? Thank you.